Hey everybody, before I get started, I just want to mention a couple of ways that you can engage with me on a more personal level. I have a few avenues set up and I keep focusing on one, and I figured, why don't I make a short little video talking about all of them real quick before we get into these episodes. So first thing, Patreon. There's a link in the episode description and every episode description to the Patreon, as well as a video on the feed called Major Announcement that has all the details of what each tier offers and how much they cost. I implore you to check that out. I offer a lot of cool shit for my patrons. Second thing, the Discord channel. There's also a Discord link in the episode description and in every episode description. I have multiple channels set up there for each show that I'm covering, and it's a great way to just engage with me. I have a channel set up for MMA talk as well. I'm a big MMA fan, so if you're an MMA fan, you can check that out as well. There's a link to the Discord in the episode description. And then lastly, the Facebook and Twitter. Social media. Follow me on there. I post news on there. When I say news, I mean like, hey, I'm stopping covering this show. Hey, I'm starting covering this show. Let me know what you think about this. I do live watches of things on Facebook where like I'll check in and say I'm watching so-and-so show, and then I'll like live comment while I'm watching it, and that'll be cool if maybe you watch that show too and you want to watch along with me, or you're watching it later and you will see my thoughts, which are usually pretty entertaining because I'm usually pretty high when I'm writing them. So check out all those links in each episode description, and let's talk about this episode. Peace.
One mic, one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. One mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 1, Episode 3 of AMC's Mayfair Witches, entitled Second Line. So this episode title revolves around this funeral procession that we see Rowan kind of crash midway through the episode. Sip tells Rowan, do not leave this apartment, do not leave this room. Stay here, be safe, don't let anyone see you. Lasher pulls the fire alarm, Rowan goes outside, and immediately all of Sip's requirements go completely out the window. And she not only, okay, so I understand she might not want to sit outside, wait for the firefighters to say, okay, you can go back in. Maybe she doesn't want to stay outside. But to do the complete opposite of that, be like, let me go walk to Carlotta's house. Like, what the fuck was she thinking? Anyway, it revolves around this funeral scene that we see that Rowan has wandered into after she has blatantly disobeyed Sip's orders. And she comes across this funeral, and essentially what's happening here is the funeral is kind of more like a parade. And this is an example of second lining. So in a wedding or a funeral, the main procession of the funeral, whether that's like the hearse, the casket, pallbearers, whatever, or in the case of a wedding, the bride or groom, those people are like in the main line. The revelers who are like following and celebrating this union or this person's life or whatever, the people who are dancing, who you see in this episode, that's the second line. And Rowan finds herself intermingling with the second line after a woman approaches her and gets her to take this drink that's like a shot. Like, if you ever been to, not even New Orleans, but like there's a lot of places that sell you like these shots that are in like vials that are the equivalent of probably like a double shot. She takes this shot against her better judgment. And the woman that convinces her to take the shot, we see, the audience, we see it's Lasher, but she doesn't see that. And the shot appears to make Rowan a lot more susceptible to basically anything from Lasher. There's a cool moment where Lasher talks about the dead always being with us, and we can see like dead people dancing among the second line, including the guy who the funeral is supposedly for. Because when the funeral starts, the people holding up, it looks like picket signs, but it's like a photo of, I'm assuming, the person who is dead that they're having this procession for. And then we see that same guy kind of like celebrating with everybody in that scene, which I thought that was kind of a cool scene. And, you know, while I didn't necessarily dislike this episode or anything, this show has kind of moved from that territory of like, okay, we're taking our time to do the world building so everybody has an understanding of who these people are and how they move, the world they live in, etc. It's kind of moved from that into like, okay, we need to start actually doing something here. Because like I feel like right now this show is in a rut. This is 2 episodes where I feel like the storyline itself has not progressed very much. Like I talked last week, how the storyline didn't move much, but we had a lot of movement with Rowan's character and Deirdre going from like she don't even know who this person is at the beginning of the episode, and by the end of the episode, she's meeting her as she dies. So like from that perspective, that episode moved quickly. But from a storyline perspective, we didn't move too far. And then again in this episode, not only did we not move the story along too much, but all of the information, most of the information that we got in this episode was information that I think, if you were paying attention, you didn't even need. So I just kind of feel like it's time for this show to start getting this plot moving forward. But I'm going to get into, there's a few things I didn't like about this episode. I'm going to get in those kind of like as I move through and talk about each topic. So I want to start by talking about the beginning of this episode. It begins with a flashback. And it's now, I realize now, it's the same, well, I realized at the time, but I want to get into what I realize, what I think they're doing. But it's the same woman from the flashback from last week who she was giving like the hand job underneath the tree, and she saw the birds. And I asked her, like, okay, I see the connection with the birds between that woman and Rowan, but other than that, like, what was the point of that scene? Like, what was I supposed to learn about this woman from this scene? And I didn't learn shit. And I'm like, well, I feel like that scene's gonna come back around later, which it kind of sort of has. So we opened this episode with this woman again. Her name's Suzanne, and another woman is brought in with like with her fucking her innards revealed by a boar, and she appears to be like she's about to here. And this woman Suzanne is essentially tasked with helping this woman transition into into a pork-free afterlife. But what I think is interesting here is that now I feel like what they're doing is something similar to what The Expanse did in its final season and what Better Call Saul did throughout its entire run, which is having these separate scenes, this one scene that's an entirely different story that where they play like a little bit of it on each episode. And what Better Call Saul did was they did it at the end of each season, and then they had several full episodes featuring that storyline at the end of the final season. And then The Expanse, in the final season, they had an entirely separate storyline where they played just like a little bit out of each one at the beginning of each episode. And I think that's what they're doing here. But I do want to say that I feel like what they're doing right now is flawed because like it feels like where they cut the scene is like really weird. Like, so I'm going to talk about what happened, what I liked about this scene. There's a moment I like in this scene. It's not a compliment, by the way, but it's just something I thought was funny. But there's a moment I like in this scene, and the reason I want to talk about this scene is because this is where the whole flashback sequence ends, and I thought it was a weird place to end it. But this dying woman, she asked Suzanne if she's scared of death, and just like Eminem would say, she says, "Hell yeah, I'm afraid of death. I don't want to die yet." But no, she's like, I'm afraid of death because I don't believe in none of this shit. Like, I don't believe in heaven. I don't believe in hell. I don't believe in your religion. None of that shit. She's like, I know it's a sin. I'm like, you think? Like, not believing in every aspect of a religion is probably a sin within that religion. I know it's a sin. I don't believe in none of this shit. Like, yeah, probably. But she says that, and the scene ends. And I just thought that was a really weird time to like cut that scene off. And I feel like the same thing happened last week. And I think the reason for that is it feels like say they filmed out this whole thing, right? Well, they didn't film it out at one time, but like say they have the idea of we have a 30-minute portion that is this Suzanne storyline. Let's chop it up and put 5 minutes at the beginning of 6 episodes, something like that, right? But instead of ending these 5-minute portions at proper places, it feels like they were just like strict to the 5 minutes. So like whatever's happening at the end of that 5 minutes, fuck it. We've only allotted 5 minutes. Like both of those scenes felt like they stopped prematurely. Like it didn't feel like, I feel like when you have that, you need to be able to take something away from the little portion of the scene that you get. Like you need to learn something to that effect, right? And I think I was supposed to learn that there was something with Suzanne and the birds or whatever in that first one. But like, I don't know, like, why was she giving that guy a hand job? I don't fucking know. I still don't even know what the birds mean. And then we come to this episode, and now, like, I feel like maybe we should have started to see like the start of whatever it is that Suzanne is gonna do with this woman. But it's like this portion was really just, hey, we need Suzanne to do something to help this woman. All right. And is it. And I'm like, I don't need that. Like, I didn't need last week's. Like, I feel like they need to either make these longer and combine some, or just, like, cut them off at different moments. Because it just feels like they cut them off, like at weird times where I'm just like, I don't even really feel like I needed any of what you gave me. Like the give me something useful in each one, and it doesn't really matter where you cut it off. But I don't know, that was weird. I think there was another thing I want to talk about with this too. I don't know. It was comparing it to The Expanse of Better Call Saul, so that's fine. So the rest of the episode picks up right where the previous one left off. Rowan is in the elevator holding Deirdre's body, and also I think this is a good time to this is like a side tangent. Let me just say, I feel like 95% sure that the creators of this show did not even give a fuck about the proper way to pronounce Deirdre's name. Like, I'm telling you, I'm like 95% sure I have heard both Deirdre and Deidre in this show. I am 100% sure I've seen both versions in the captions. And I'm pretty sure I heard Sip say both names. And I'm just like, well, one, I confirmed via IMDb that it's Deirdre with an R, and via the book that it's Deirdre with an R. So when they say Deidre on the show, they're saying it wrong. But I feel like they should care about that more. And I feel like if it gets to me, like after all of the people that a television episode has to go through before it hits my eyes, the fact, if something gets to me with an inconsistency in a character name, like, to me, that just reeks of, like, you just didn't give enough of a fuck. Like, did you even notice that? Like, because I've been sitting, like, the first episode, I was, like, confused. I'm like, is it Deidre or Deirdre? Who are they talking about? Like, what? And once I looked it up, I on IMDb, I'm like, okay, it's Deirdre. It must have just been me. I might have been hearing it funny, whatever. It was probably Deirdre the whole time. Mike, you don't know what the fuck's going on. And then I watched episode 2, and I'm like, I feel like they said Deidre a couple of times. And then I'm 100% sure Sip says Deidre in this episode. So I just want to point out, you have to not give any morsel of fuck for an episode to hit the viewer's eyes with inconsistencies in the pronunciation of a character's name. Like, you can't give a fuck because there's too many eyes that will have seen that scene or whatever number of scenes for it to get to me still fucked up. So I just want to say I've noticed that, and that to me, it's not a big deal, but it is, because it's like, it shows a level of not giving a fuck that I think you should be that's like the bare minimum of fuck you need to be given. Like you need to make sure that certain things connect. You need to make sure things make sense. You need to make sure that the characters know each other's names. Like, that's kind of a big deal. So it's like, nitpicking the pronunciation of a name feels like it's not a big deal, but having characters saying a character's name any old manner of way throughout the run of a television show just shows a sloppiness on the part of the actors and anybody who's involved in the post-production. And I still feel like I must be tripping, because I'm like, I know I'm going hard right now on this point, and if I'm wrong about that, I look like a fool. But man, I'm telling you, I swear to God, they have pronounced this motherfucker's name 8 different ways on this show. I'm telling you. But that's enough on this side rant. Let's wrap up talking about this episode, because I've spent a lot of time bullshitting. So Carlotta approaches Rowan in the hotel lobby, and she gives her info, about who she is and whatnot. But then she's told, she being Carlotta, is told that there's a Mr. Mayfair who wants to see Rowan. And she refuses, and then she tells Rowan that this Mr. Mayfair would eat her alive. And I think easily the most compelling aspect of this show is Mr. Mayfair, a.k.a. Cortland. He seems like incredibly kind and charming whenever we see him, but we know he has a dark side. And the way people talk about him, like, they talk about him in ways that are way worse than anything we've seen from him so far on the show. Like, you think this motherfucker is like literally like the devil in human form based on the way his sisters talk about him. But what we've seen from him, it's like, he seems cool, but like, I know it's something up. So it's the difference between like curiosity, like, oh, I wonder what's going on with this guy, and yo, is this guy like the fucking demon or some shit? Like, what is up with this guy? So like, I'm curious to see how his character is going to evolve, or at least how we interpret the character is going to evolve over the course of the season. But another thing I didn't like about this episode was all the information that we needed. No, I take that back. That we received just being narrated to us by Sip. Once Rowan arrives at his apartment, she starts asking questions and he just answers them. And I know, like, a lot of people, you guys be like, why would you care about a character asking questions and another character answering them. Because, like, longtime viewers of this show know that I like when information is, like, shown to me, and then the show gives me the respect of letting me put two and two together. Where I watch it and I'm like, oh, so that's what happened. And you guys can all relate to that feeling of, oh, don't you like that feeling when you're watching a show when something happens or someone says something, but you read between the lines or you put two and two together and you have that epiphany, that light bulb, and you're like, oh shit, that's what's happening? When they explain shit like that to you, it takes that feeling away. You don't get to experience that because you just have shit explained to you. So, I wanted all of the information that Sip delivered in this episode, but most of it I had already assumed via what I had already explained, like the idea of like observing things and putting two and two together. I had already gleaned a lot of what he shared already just based on the work the show had done. So when he starts just answering questions and explaining shit, I'm like, okay, now one, I have a character just explaining the plot to me or explaining shit that I should be being shown, which already irritates me. But on top of that, he's telling me shit I already fucking knew that I pieced together. Like, you already did this work, Mayfair Witches. I've already pieced all this shit together. Now you've got the person, now you've got Sip here to like narrate everything that's already happened. Like, this is what happened. Like previously on, like this is what happened. And it's like, it feels like that was there for the people who just like aren't paying good enough attention to the first two episodes. So like, I don't know, but like, let's run over real quick some of the information that Sip provided. In these, I don't want to say in this scene because it's not one scene, but it's one setting, his apartment, and they hit that location, I think maybe like 3 times or something. But he tells her about the Mayfair house, which, again, wasn't news since we've already been given enough information to know about that house. He tells her about Lasher, but he really is just like, yeah, she has this being that fucking just was stuck to her. I don't really know shit about the guy either. So he doesn't give me any more information about Lasher other than that he's aware of Lasher's existence. So was I. He tells about what he could do with his hands, but again, I had already gleaned that information based on what I had seen. Like, by that point, we'd already seen 2 or 3 instances of him touching something and seeing a scene. So, like, I'd already gleaned what he could do. He tells her that her gift is the strongest he's ever seen, whatever that means. And then, like, that was new information that you know, that was done just to give us the idea of how powerful Rowan can be. But, like, what gift is he talking about? Like, her gift to, like, telepathically pop blood vessels, like, I'm like, it's kind of cool, but like if that's the most powerful witch, is like she could pop blood vessels, like boom, you dead. Like, that's okay. But he tells about Cortland and his influence, which again I've already gleaned just from seeing Cortland's behavior on the show. Like, again, this is the work that you're putting in when you're showing this guy, like the first time we see him, when he's in that room and the woman's got that snake. Like, you could tell this is a motherfucker that lives a lavish lifestyle, right? So when you, this is a good example of what I'm talking about. You show me that, and I infer from what I'm seeing that Cortland is a guy with influence. Cortland is a guy with power. He's a fancy motherfucker. I glean all that just from what he's wearing, where you have him sitting at, the fact that they just have big ass snakes like that. All that worked, right? So then when you have Sip come along and be like, Cortland is a guy of power and influence, I'm like, I already knew that. Like, so it's like you're serving me up good show, but they're like, oh, we don't want to alienate the people who aren't paying attention, so let's explain what we've already shown you. And like, that doesn't work for me. So let's see, where was I at? Carlotta devised a plan to lure Rowan to her house by having Deirdre's wake there. She also wants to pawn the necklace off on someone else, which she ultimately does, forcing it onto I don't know if she's like a nanny or whatever. Her name's Delphine. I don't know what her, the one black woman who's like a maid or so. Shit, she might, well, no, it's mine. I was like, she might be a slave, but no, it's modern day. She's probably a descendant of slaves that they had in previous fucking generations, but yeah, this Delphine woman. And Delphine ultimately ends up bashing her brains in after Carlotta locks her in the basement. And that brings me to yet another thing I didn't like about this episode. I am officially fed up with the Lasher character. To the point where if they don't start to define this character in some way or give him some rules so I can know what the fuck he is, who the fuck he is, what he can do, what he can't do, I might stop watching this show altogether after the next episode. Like, that's how sick I am of the Lasher character, and it's not necessarily the Lasher character's fault. It's how sick I am of this, like, he can, I just have no idea of any, like, I don't know who he is, what he is, like, all I know is he's somebody that's tied to the family. But what irritates me is the lack of definition on what his limitations are, what his powers are, if he has powers, what he is. I really lean on what he is, because we still don't know what he is. Like, I don't know, is he a physical being? Is he not a physical being? Is he a ghost? Was he somebody who was alive before and he's dead now? Like, is he part of the family? Is he somebody who's affiliated with the family? Like, I don't even know, like, if this is a person, let alone who he is, what his past is like, and most importantly, what he can or can't do. So I want to talk about what happened in this episode as it pertains to the necklace with the key on it and Lasher. So they make a point at the beginning of the episode of showing the necklace still on Deirdre's dead body, which I thought that's a strange shot, because why is she even wearing the necklace? She already took it off, right? Like, because she didn't even want to be under the control of it. Maybe she put it back on and I just missed it. Whatever. But I thought it was weird that they showed her having the necklace on when she was still dead, because I'm like, okay, something's going to come of this, right? Like, it would have meant more to me if they showed a bare neck, because then I would have been like, where's the necklace? Anyway, next time we see it, Carlotta has it, and she verbalizes that she took it. And she discusses it, putting it on someone else to trap him. And she ends up putting it on Delphine, like I said. The whole episode, we see Lasher moving about freely. He's at the second line with Rowan. He's the one that set the fire at Sip's apartment. Sip sees that Lasher set the fire at his apartment when he touches it. Then we see Delphine bashing her head in, like I mentioned, and Carlotta says something to the effect of, he doesn't like being trapped in there. Unless he is someone other than Lasher, why the fuck are you telling me that Lasher is trapped in Delphine's head when I just seen this motherfucker walking all over goddamn New Orleans the whole episode? Like, what, like, and even if there is some explanation for why he was just freely moving about New Orleans for the whole episode, but then at the end, he's, for whatever reason, trapped inside Delphine's head. If there's an explanation for that, you fucked up not showing it to me on the show, because it ain't there. Because all that's there is I've seen Lasher everywhere, and then they have a line that says he's trapped in her head. And again, I could be wrong. Maybe the he is not Lasher. Maybe whoever's trapped in, who's tied to this necklace is not Lasher. I'm pretty sure they said that in the last episode, but this is what I mean about, like, when I'm talking about why I'm upset about the Lasher character. Does he have powers? What are they? What are his limitations? One minute it seems like he has limitations. They talk about it with the necklace and shit. But the next time it seems like he doesn't. We see this motherfucker moving around, doing whatever. We see Deirdre is somehow able to, like, I don't know, conjure him up, inhabit his body. I don't know, because they don't define shit with this guy. And, like, that is really frustrating for me, to have a character who just can do whatever the fuck. Because I'm like, how am I even supposed to gain any kind of investment in this show? Because, like, and I know that sounds like, how does that fuck up the whole show? But it's like, okay, I don't know if this guy, like, when he shows up, I don't know, can he be defeated? I don't know, because I don't know if he has weaknesses, because I don't even know what the fuck he can do. So, like, you take away any kind of impact this guy can have. And I know they probably think, like, if we just make it so you don't have any fucking clue, he's just gonna seem omnipotent. But he doesn't seem omnipotent to me. It just seems like a shittily written character. So, like, they got to, like, define this guy, because it means, every time I see him, it means jack shit, other than the fact that maybe something's gonna happen. But, like, I don't even know, again, if this is a physical being. Is this a ghost? Like, can he move between, like, I've seen him physically interact with his surroundings. Can he do that? Like, I don't know. It's just, there's so many, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. There's so little to understand about Lasher, and I'm cool with there still being a lot to reveal about who he is and his past. I'm cool with that. But I need this motherfucker to have some rules and define what he can or cannot do and what he is. Like, I need that, because every time I see Lasher, I'm just like, what the fuck can he eat? Like, what is he even doing? What can he do? What can't he do? This motherfucker's just here doing shit. I can't tolerate that anymore. I need to get something definitive about Lasher in the next episode, or I might be done. Like, that shit is so fucking irritating to me. Man, I can't. Well, I'm about to say I can't explain it to you guys, but I think I just did. And then also, I don't even find him interesting. Like, he's a mediocre-looking man that the show is trying to tell me is sexy, who just comes and goes with no rules surrounding how he comes and goes, what he is, whoever, whatever, right? And I'm just over this character who I think that the show thinks is like this ominous, foreboding presence that like casts this large shadow over the show. And I was like, oh shit, it's Lasher. When in reality, the lack of information that they've given to him just makes him an uninteresting, undefined, like, entity that just pops up randomly. Like, he doesn't mean shit to me. So too long didn't read. I don't know shit about this guy, so I don't fucking care about him. And he's not intimidating. The episode ends with Sip agreeing to help Rowan kind of like harness her powers or learn how to use them, whatever. And then like she takes his gloves off for him, which felt like a strangely misplaced sexy moment. I'm like, is he gonna like make him like I want you to understand me, and then he like makes him touch her titties or something with his bare hands. Like I don't know where that was going, but I'm thinking like, is this about to turn sexual? Because it didn't feel sexual until she decided like, let me take your glove. Like, what is taking the gloves off for him supposed to do other than make him feel like he's about to get fucked? Like, I don't know. And then she went through the whole second line thing on like ecstasy. It must have been ecstasy in that shot. I'm like, man, Rowan is so ready to get fucked. The show has established that she, what did the bartender say? Like a revolving door of guys that go to her boat. Like they went out of their way to paint Rowan as a very promiscuous person. They had her on ecstasy going through the second line. She's sliding the gloves off of him like, please put these bare hands on my titties. And nothing happens. I was a little disappointed. But they lock hands and he cries while experiencing whatever she's experienced. And that's how it ends. So I want to end with a couple of thoughts. And all these thoughts revolve around Sip. I thought it was wild that Sip has a goddamn safe door to get into his apartment, complete with the fucking wheel that you have to spin. I thought that was really cool. I would love to have a place that had one of those doors. My favorite part of the episode, and this is meant to be insulting to the show. I'm not even gonna mince words here. I'm mean to be insulting. Sip is trying to be sympathetic to what Rowan has experienced. He's like, I saw when I touched Deirdre's body, I saw Carlotta taking you away, stripping her from your mother, and I saw how upset your mother was, and I felt that. And he's like, I know how you feel about, having been taken from your mother, whatever. And she goes, you have no idea how I feel. Which, again, I can't remember what show it was, but that is a lazy fucking thing to write. I hate the stupid fucking, you have no idea how I feel. When somebody says, I know how you feel. You have no idea how I feel. I hate that because it is a lazy thing to write and is almost entirely always inaccurate. Just because I am not experiencing what you are experiencing does not mean that I don't understand what you must feel like. I do have an idea of how you feel because I'm not a remedial fucking moron. So like, don't write, like that is such a lazy, I can't get over, I'm saying lazy with as much emphasis as I can because sitting down to write the exchange of I know how you feel, you have no idea how I feel, you are a shit writer because you have no fucking imagination. You are copying and pasting the same lazy shit that every other fucking person is putting their show that's inaccurate and lazy and like no one even says that in real life. Like they just put that in shows, but like that frustrates me to no end. And then Sip goes, actually, I do know how you feel because I touched you and that's my fucking powers. He didn't say that, but like that was a general idea. And I love that because it doesn't change the fact that they still wrote that shitty line into the show. But to have him kind of be like, actually, I do know how you feel. To like, and then she like gets quiet after that. I thought like that was great. And then Sip's sister comes into his apartment and she is pregnant. And Rowan asks her like, do you feel a connection to the baby? She's like, no. And then Rowan's like, the baby feels a connection to you. Just explains what it feels like to be an adopted child. And I just thought like, I felt like, I don't know. That felt really corny to me. Like, the idea of, like, do you feel a connection? No, I don't. Now, already, I kind of question that. Like, you're growing a human inside your body, and you don't feel a connection just because it's for someone else. But, like, at the end of the day, the fact that it's for someone else is like a that's not a literal feeling, right? That's like a emotion, right? It's like, oh, I don't like the fact that this baby is really for somebody else. But the fact that you're growing a human inside you, that's physiological. That's a physiological connection, and I have a real hard time believing that you don't feel anything from it. But aside from that, the fact that Rowan just goes on this little rant about like what it's like to be an adopted child, but not really saying that, like I don't know. I just thought it was kind of corny. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Like I said, I had a lot of issues with this episode, most of which I'm willing to overlook. Like, even though, like, how I went off on the whole thing about you have no idea how I feel, I'm willing to overlook that. But the shit with Lasher, I'm not willing to overlook. That character needs work now. I might be out if they don't fix this character and make him interesting, because right now, he is a undefined mess. Like, I don't know anything about this fucking guy. So that's it. I will see you guys next week for episode 4, and until then, peace.